If you're ready to get more out of the content you are already creating, you, my friends, are in the right place. Today on the podcast, we're going to dive into 3 steps to go through to start repurposing your awesome content today. Hey there, everyone, and welcome to this live recording of episode number 291 of the Amplify Your Awesome podcast. I'm your host, Yong Pratt, also known as Dr. Content, because I have a knack for helping amazing business owners just like you breathe new life into their content and discover what is ailing their content so that you can use it as your greatest marketing asset. If you happen to be joining me live, let me know you are here. I'd love to give you a shout out and say hello. If you have any questions during this live, just pop them below this video and I will get to them towards the end. So if you've been following along on the podcast over the past 5 or 6 or 7 weeks, we have literally been going into how to repurpose your content no matter the starting point. I know some of you watching and listening have books. Some of you have blogs. Others of you have podcasts, and others of you are creating videos. And throughout all these episodes, we've been diving into specific strategies to turn your awesome content, no matter what it is, into more assets. Because at the end of the day, the awesome content you are creating is absolutely an asset. And it can be one that you can use to market your business to attract more people. Right? The whole idea behind creating awesome content is to attract more of the people you want in your world and repel those that aren't a good fit. And I know when I first heard this whole analogy of attract and repel, I was almost a little bit offended about repelling people because I was that person who really just didn't want to rock the boat. I wanted those steady waters, and the idea of repelling people really just didn't sit well with me. Now that I'm in this world a little deeper, more ensconced in this space of podcasting and amplifying your awesome and helping you reach more of the right people, I completely understand that is exactly what content does, right? Not everybody in the world is going to love us. Some people, in fact, will not like us very much at all. And that's okay because we don't want all the people. We just want the people who love us and respect us and want to hang out with us and learn from us, right? That's who we really want to bring in to our world. With that being said, lots of people have sent in questions saying, awesome, I really love this idea of repurposing. I want to turn my book into all these things you said. I want to turn my podcast into more things. I want to start a YouTube channel. And right now I'm doing a podcast. How do I make that happen? And the biggest question that I've gotten asked in response to all of these episodes as of late is, well, it sounds awesome, but first of all, it sounds complicated, and I just don't know where to start. So we're going to start today with talking about 3 steps to take whatever your content is now and turn it into more. If you're joining me live, say hello. I'd love to give you a shout out. And if you are watching the replay, let me know you're here so I can acknowledge you and give you a shout out as well. So let's dive in. First of all, let's clarify content repurposing because I know there's some confusion about that word and what it actually means. In my world, content repurposing is really about transforming the content you have currently into more little nuggets of goodness that you can share on more platforms. So that's simply what content repurposing is. I have a lot of tools that I use. If you haven't grabbed my toolkit yet, comment with the word toolkit down below or over on the show notes for this episode, and I'll let you know where you can get that. All right, step number 1 in starting to repurpose your content today, not tomorrow, not next week, not next month, today. It's really that simple. You could do this today. So the first step, actually, let me back up a little bit. Before we get to the first step, I wanted to explain to you that this process that I'm going to share with you, this 3-step process, is something that I take my students and my private clients especially through. We actually work one-on-one together and discuss all of these things. And if that is of interest to you, let me know. Just put one-on-one down below and I will reach out to you and let you know how I can help you do that, because that's where we make the biggest strides, where you can get my eyeballs and my expertise onto your content and we can really dive in and make a plan, because repurposing, if nothing else, is creating a plan to share your content with more awesome people. Okay, so this whole process, this 3-step process, is called Content C.P.R. Here at Amplify Your Awesome, we're all about helping you breathe new life into the content you already have, right? You don't always have to go out there and create content every day. In fact, I don't recommend you do that at all, because at some point you're going to reach a place where you're just burnt out. You're not going to want to create content because it's just draining, especially if you're not getting the response to the content that you're creating. It can feel a little bit disheartening to move forward and constantly create and have no one on the other side receiving that, right? So we don't want to get into what I like to call the content creation hamster wheel. It is exhausting. It causes burnout. It makes us feel like we're not doing the work we're meant to do here on this planet, right? We want to make sure that when we're creating content, that we are interacting and having a dialogue with other people and making sure that our messaging is getting in front of the right people at the right time, right? So this whole process of Content C.P.R, again, is a process that I take my private clients through. And if you are interested, let me know. Just either message me or just put one-on-one below, and I will reach out to you and let you know how we can start that journey together. So Content C.P.R, as you can see, there are 3 steps. We have the C, we have the P, and we have the R. So a 3-step process to breathe new life into the content you're already creating. Are you ready? Let's dive in. So step number 1, or the C in this case of Content C.P.R, is to curate. Now, this is the one that typically takes the most amount of time, only because the people that I normally work with, the awesome business owners like you, you're prolific content creators. You're creating a lot of good stuff, whether that's podcast episodes, whether that's blog posts, books, videos. You're out there putting one foot in front of the other and creating this amazing content. So the first step in understanding how to start repurposing is to curate. We need to figure out what we already have. So here's what I want you to do. Whether you do this old school on pen and paper, or you use something like we use here and put it into a Google spreadsheet, you're going to go out and fetch or gather up all of the content you've put out on the internet. It could be blog post links, it could be podcast links, video links to your YouTube channel, whatever it is. Those pieces that you have sprinkled out into the universe, you're going to go and put those in one place. And I know for lots of people, this is a big step. Why? Because most of us create a lot of content and put it in lots of different places. So to go find those things can sometimes be a bit time consuming. However, I'm here to tell you that this piece is the most critical piece, because if you've already created content about a particular topic you want to talk about, wouldn't it be awesome if you could refer somebody back to another blog post or another podcast episode or another video about that same topic, right? We want people to see more of our stuff, so we need to make sure we know what we already have. All right, so that's the first part. You need to curate. Go out there and gather all the links for all of your awesome content. Put them all in one place, because that's the other thing as content creators. We're really good at creating. However, we're always not so great about recording and documenting where to find those things. For instance, for a long time, I would want to send people to my podcast, but every time I'd have to go Google myself and grab the link. And when I finally stopped and put that into a Google document or a Google spreadsheet, or even sometimes I use my notes app, a central place that I can copy and paste because it was getting exhausting writing the same links over and over and over again. So that's something that this process will help you to create. You'll have this beautiful garden of content sitting in your Google Drive, in your Dropbox, wherever you like to store your content for long-term use. That's what you're going to do in this process. You're going to go out there and curate it. Once you've curated it, you're probably going to find an interesting phenomenon. And that is the topics of your blog posts or your podcasts or your videos or even your books are going to fall into some categories. So once you've curated all of your content, you have it all in one place, the next step is to categorize it, right? My friend Deb LaFlamme would call these pillars. In our businesses, we want to present different pillars of ourselves because we're not one-tracked people. We have different facets of our lives. And in order to have people get to know, like, and trust us, if we only shared business stuff and never about our personal life, there wouldn't be that personal connection. So we need these pillars or different dynamic content topics that we can talk about. And you'll likely find that when you curate your content all in one central location, you're going to naturally find that there are topics or pillars of content you already have. And that's an awesome thing. It can help us really sort of prepare for the next step in the process, which is to prioritize. Now, I'm a big fan in repurposing everything. However, when you're just getting started, that can seem a little bit overwhelming. So we need to prioritize, and we're going to do this prioritization in a strategic manner. We're going to pull out our calendars, and we're going to take a look at what is coming up. Do you have a book launch coming up soon? Do you have a podcast episode release with a really big guest coming up? Do you have blog post series or series of blog posts that are coming up that you really want people to pay attention to? We're going to prioritize all that curated content based on what's coming next. What are the goals? What do we want to do with our content? Do we want people to sign up for a webinar? Do we want them to subscribe to our podcast? Do we want them to go pre-order that next book? Do we want them to share a blog post with somebody else? What is it? What is the action we want them to do? And we want to prioritize the content we already have based on what we have coming up in our businesses. We want to know what is coming next, and certain pieces of the content you've curated are going to be ideal for that goal, that priority in your business. So that is step number 2 in the Content C.P.R. process. We're going to prioritize your content that you just curated in step 1, and we're going to prioritize it based on the goals of our business and what we have coming up next. Does that make sense? If you're joining me live, let me know if this is making sense. If you have questions, pop them below. I'm happy to come back and answer them at the end of this recording. So that is step number 2 in the Content C.P.R. framework. Next, step number 3, the third part of the C.P.R. framework, is the actual repurposing. Now, to repurpose just to repurpose because we can is not always going to be the best strategy. So when I say repurpose, it's having a clear, concise strategy that supports the priorities that we establish in step number 2, right? We want to repurpose with a strategic plan based on the priorities of our business using the content we already have, right? We can move the C.P.R. framework forwards and backwards because one thing builds upon the next. And when it comes to repurposing, start with one piece of content. Don't think about all the content you've curated in step number 1, because that, my friends, often causes analysis paralysis, where we're so overwhelmed because there's such a mass amount of information and we think to ourselves, oh my gosh, there's so much. Where am I going to start? I don't have time to do this. And all of that inner chatter starts to rear its ugly head. And we want to keep that at bay, because if you just start with one thing, life is easy. If you just focus on that one thing every day. So when it comes to repurposing, from your curated content in step number 1, what is one piece of content that you can start and repurpose today? Let me give you some examples of how this might look. So let's say, for instance, you're a podcaster like me, but if you're a blogger, if you create videos, these same principles apply. They may look just a little bit different on the other side. So if I want to repurpose a podcast episode, and maybe my podcast is 15 or 20 minutes, how can I get more people to listen to that podcast? Well, one of the first things I want to do with that podcast episode is to chunk it out into bite-sized pieces. And those little bite-sized pieces, those snippets of your main content can then be sprinkled out across social media. That's a really good step. So if you have a 15-minute podcast, for instance, and let's say in 15 minutes you have 5 bite-sized chunks that you can sprinkle out. Just by doing that, you've 5x'd your content that you can share with other people. That's a big deal from one little thing. Let me give you another example. So take that same podcast episode, we've chunked it out. We have 5 little snippets, little audio snippets. What if you created a graphic for each one of those snippets? Again, you have 5 more pieces. You started with 1 and now you have 10. And that probably will take you 10 or 15 minutes to go create a quick graphic in a program like Canva. And if you're curious to know my favorite tools that I use every single day that have changed my business, that have allowed me to systematize this process, definitely grab my toolkit. I'm going to leave where you can get it down below. If you do want me to reach out to you though, just put the word toolkit underneath this video and I will reach out to you personally and let you know where you can get your hands on that, because it contains 15 of my most used, most loved tools that I've been curating for the past, 5 or 10 years or so. So I know for me and for my students, they are the best of the best and are going to help you automate a lot of this process, which, my friends, is a really big deal to get to the automation portion of content repurposing. All right. So, my friends, let's do a little recap now. So we have our Content C.P.R. framework. And in that framework, there are 3 steps, right? And again, you can do this yourself by watching this video, listening to this on the podcast. This episode will drop on Saturday on the podcast. You can also watch the replay of this live recording. We like to drip out content. So I'm showing you an example of how we share the same content in different mediums by repurposing it. Because at the end of this video, I'm going to have my software do what it does. It's going to turn this video into an audio. I'll then be able to share the audio to the podcast on Saturday. And then we'll create some graphics, we'll create some snippets, we'll do all of that. And it's for a very specific purpose, right? So let's review Content C.P.R. What are the 3 steps? Number 1, curate. Gather up all of your content in one central location. It's kind of like when you set out to go to the grocery store. You want to look in your cabinets and in your fridge to see what you need, rather than trying to remember all the things you actually have in your pantry or in your fridge. It's better to take an inventory, to curate what you have, and then fill in those gaps, right? But you want to get everything in one central location by curating your content. Step number 2, you're going to take all that content, you're going to prioritize it based on the goals you have in your business. Do you have a launch coming up? Do you have something new you're offering? Do you have a new course? Do you have a new program? Do you have a new product? How can you take the content you've already curated and make it support the next step in your business? So step 2 is prioritizing your content. And that brings us, of course, to the final step, and that's actually the repurposing step. And there's many ways to slice and dice this repurposing, again, based on your priorities, which were based on the content you already have, right? So it goes forwards and backwards in this Content C.P.R. process. Again, if you want to know the tools I use, drop the word toolkit. I'll let you know where you can get that, because it literally contains all the tools that I personally use and my students use, and it's changed my life completely in what I no longer have to do, which as a business owner is a great thing when you can get to that place where there are things on your not to-do list because they're not high value, they're not moving you forward, they're not making the needle jump up in your business. So if we can find tools to help us do those things that aren't going to serve us in the long run, like moving video around from place to place, that's a good day, my friends. Okay, so there you have it. 3 steps to start repurposing your content today. And it's a process that I call Content C.P.R, where you are literally breathing new life into the content you already have by curating it, by prioritizing, and by repurposing it in a very strategic manner to support your goals. Okay, my friends, I look forward to hearing from you. Let me know your biggest takeaway from this episode. You can let me know down below this video or come on over to today's show notes and let me know. I'd love to hear from you and how you implemented this content CPR framework in your business. And again, if you are interested in having me walk this journey with you, holding your hand, moving side by side to help you really dive into your content, to prioritize it based on the goals of your business, and to then repurpose your content strategically, I am happy to do that. Just put one-on-one below. I will reach out to you personally, and we can start repurposing your content together. Have an amazing day, my friends. I'll catch you next time. Cheers.